open the April meeting of the Finance Committee. Extend a welcome to all elected members, those in the public gallery, as well as those watching online. First item on the agenda is to call for apologies, and I have 2 apologies recorded for Councillor Wilson and for Councillor O'Leary. Are there any other apologies?
I'll move.
Thank you. Just have a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Tooman. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. I'd like, with the approval of the committee, to move some items on the agenda forward, given that we have interest in item 10 on fluoride, item 16 on the Rivoli Theatre, and we also have a representative for item 14 from the university in respect to the Gallagher Academy. So I'd like to move those 3 items in that order ahead of item 8, which is the 10-year monitoring report. Item 17 on internal audit services, for which I will declare in the next agenda item a declaration of interest, and Councillor Mallet will chair that item. We will move to after item 9, which is the key projects monitoring report. Also on the agenda, I mention also to elected members the incorrect attachment in the hard copy of the open agenda for item 13, the Claudelands Event Centre reporting. There is a corrected attachment, and that has been circulated. We also have a late item, which is the consideration and approval of the Council's draft 1 submission on MFE's consultation document, Next Steps for Fresh Water, which will be taken as item 19. So I will so move the changes to the agenda. Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Thank you.
Aye.
Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I will declare an interest in item 17 on the contract for internal audit services, and will step back from the chair while that item is being discussed. We now come to the public forum, and I have listed down here 3 speakers who are all going to speak on the Rivoli report. So first speaker is Lois Livingston, if you'd like to come forward, Lois. And the rules of engagement here are 3 minutes to speak, 2.5 minutes, the first bell will sound, and then there'll be a second ring at 3 minutes. If possible, if you can keep it less than 3 minutes, we might have an opportunity for questions. Thanks.
And you've got 30 minutes, though, haven't you, for the public forum? I thought we'd get 10 minutes each this time. That's okay. Thank you very much. I think it's a great idea, your public forums. We need them at the Regional Council. Oh, just blow my nose. Thank you. Don't take that as timing. All right. Thank you all very much for being here today to listen to our submission regarding Rivoli Theatre. I chair the board of Rivoli Theatre, so it's with that hat on my head that I'm here today, and none of my other hats. I firstly want to say that I'm very disappointed in the staff report. I'm very disappointed that the council has not been given the email that I sent to the Chief Executive or the letter from Stace Hammond, our lawyers, outlining the reasons for our request. So instead of actually dealing with our request, you've been given 4 more options to look at. And this is what happened last time. And we didn't have the opportunity to be here last time. Now we have a report that is just a smokescreen and has not addressed the issue. And for that, I'm very disappointed in the CEO and your staff for bringing a report like this to Council that does not have all the information attached to it. And for that reason, it totally ignores the reasons set out in the letter from Stace Hammond and the email to the CEO, so I've brought them with me. And Alistair Barnett is going to talk to part of the email that I sent to the CEO, which outlines some of the history behind this, particularly how we came to be at Rivoli in the first place. We have tried in good faith to get the monies together. And I can give you the total as of today for your consideration. We, as a small community group, have managed to raise $436,483.04. No small ask in just under a year to do that. It has cost us dearly. And that is what is in the letter from Stace Hammond that you have not received. The Stace Hammond letter, which went to Tompkins Wake and to your CEO, has not come to you as councillors. In it, it says, our client instructs that as a result of its fundraising efforts, it has raised a substantial portion of the purchase price. However, it has not quite achieved the level required for the purchase of the land. The fundraising to acquire the land has also had a significant impact on its ability to raise funds for its standard operational costs. It has had to focus on funding applications for the land acquisition at the expense of applications for operational costs. The incomplete land purchase process has impacted on their accountability reporting. You can't apply for another grant if you haven't done your accountability report. And until the sale of the land is finalised, we can't do an accountability report, therefore we can't apply for funds. It's a very catch-22 situation that you've put us in. We understand that operational expense grants have been made by the Council to both Meteor and Clarence Street Theatre operators, but that there is no opportunity for our client to apply for a similar grant from Council until next year. They have been given $150,000 each over the next 2 years. So we have asked that we vary the sale and purchase agreement to reduce the purchase price to $350,000. And it was important that you hear this letter because that's why we're asking for it. Not to have another 3 options put on the table for you to get confused by. We have asked to be on a parity with the other groups to say that we need the same amount of money that they've got for our operational costs. We are 80,000 down. We have enough to run for 2 more months, then we have to close our doors. That means our stagecraft classes stop, everything stops. So that's the situation we're in. We've done everything in good faith to get that money together. Haven't quite made it, won't make it by next Friday. That's where we're at.
Okay.
And we're asking for you, as a council, to help your community out. Simple as that.
Thanks, Lois. Do I have some questions?
I just wanted clarity, if I could, sorry. Is your request the option 1 request in our report?
It is. That's the only, and
Okay.
but there's no explanation in your report as to why we've asked it or whether we even asked
I've
it.
got that, I'm getting to that, but I just wanted to confirm, I was just a bit confused about what you were saying. So your request is to conclude the sale, absolute, at $350,000.
Yes.
That's right. Great. Okay, thanks. I've got another matter in terms of why we weren't provided with the additional information, and if those are in the possession of someone, can they be copied and circulated to us now, please? Right now.
And I would,
Thanks.
Thank you.
as I say, an extreme disappointment.
Any further, Councillor Clinton?
One of the options suggested that you pay the $350,000, keep the land at the theatres on, and we subdivide the piece of land at the back which you don't use.
Could I just
We
say that
settle that to recover the shortfall.
that is not in the agreement that's before you. The agreement before you is the sale and purchase agreement, and that's what we're addressing. That sale and purchase agreement asking for a reduction in the cost, not about the land itself. The land itself, for example, I was talking with Creative Waikato this morning, there are opportunities for that land to be used by all the theatre groups in Hamilton. It's not about subdividing it off and selling it. And it's certainly not about giving it back to the council for them to do that too. This was land that was given to Rivoli Theatre 30 years ago by Sir Ross Jansen's council. And we will talk to that when another speaker takes the microphone.
So do you use the land that...
At the moment we use most of the land. We have a piece that is not used. It has a couple of containers on it that belong to Operatic. There's also a garage that houses all the gear for the Hamilton Civic Choir. So we're not just Rivoli Theatre, we actually assist our fellow arts people in Hamilton in any way that we can. We have workshop facilities that the others don't have. We could easily make a very big theatre workshop on that other land for our schools and our workshops and our rehearsal spaces. There's room to really expand Rivoli to help all the other theatres in Hamilton. And that's why we don't want to even look at these other options, which were not what we came to the council with. That's not why I'm angry. We came to you with a request that you haven't been given. You've been given a smokescreen yet again by your staff. I'm grumpy about that. I'm a regional councillor. I would not allow it to happen to me. I don't expect you to allow it to happen to you.
So with your shortfall, you're going to end up with $960,000 worth of equity. Have you considered...
How? We're going to end up with what?
$960,000
No, we're not.
worth of equity.
No, we're not, because we've got a community facility on that land. It's not worth that while we're on it. It's not worth anything. We have a lease till 2027. It's only worth what we do with that piece of land. So 960,000 is another red herring. It's another smokescreen. It's nothing to do with what we're here about today.
There is a valuation to say that once the deal's wrapped up, that there'll be $960,000 worth of
Not with
value.
us on it. Not with us sitting on it. Even if we wanted to sell it, we'd have to demolish and just sell the land. And maybe then we could have enough money to go and do something else. But that's not what the Rivoli people want. They have chosen, they've been there for 30 years, I went through all this with them, they want to stay there. That's their decision.
So
That's their home.
So you're $14,000 short on the money you've got.
We are $14,000 short. We can get a bank loan. What a terrible thing for us to have to do. But there you go. We are willing to do that.
Move across
to
to
get it up.
Councillor Gallagher.
In terms of the vision
Last question.
of Sir Ross Jansen, obviously you assume that it'd be like a sports club, a long-term lease. You thought it would be a lease in perpetuity at the time, I assume, when Sir Ross and his council purchased the property.
As I said in my email, which you didn't see, that Sir Ross, I do not think Sir Ross or his council would have ever thought of this land being sold from under Rivoli, and I'm sure they would have put some safeguards in place if they thought that might happen.
And in terms of a future, around keeping the current lot, not subdividing any bit of it off, presumably the future vision will be a major facility as it evolves for that part of the city and the region, one would assume.
Well, as part of the reason to get the funding that we got from lotteries, and also we've only got promissory grants at the moment until we finally get the final amount up to you by next Friday. The lotteries grant was dependent on a 10-year strategy for improving the theatre. They don't usually give to land. What they have given is to a project.
Right.
Unfortunately, the land cost has meant that project's been put on hold for quite some time because we just don't have the wherewithal to keep asking people for money at this stage. We've had to ask people for money to pay Hamilton City Council.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just one last question, Lois. So if the council did approve the discount that you've asked for in your letter that we haven't seen, would you use the remainder of the funds up to the 436 to implement the project that you have promised to do with lotteries?
We can't do that either. What we're asking for is that we can then go back to some of our funders, particularly one of our major funders who has stayed virtually anonymous in all of this, to say, would we be able to now use some of that funds for operating costs? But a lot of funders do not fund operating costs. So we're trying to drag back some of the money to pay for the next year or so until we can actually apply, as the Meteor and Operatic have in the upcoming years, maybe for some extra help. But by then, we should be able to be like we have been for the last 30 years, self-sustaining. We've done it on grants, and we haven't come to Hamilton City Council. We're one of the only groups that hasn't come hammering on your door for lots of money, but we do feel we're being a bit hammered.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, Lance. Thanks for coming in this afternoon.
Mr Chairman, through you, could we have a copy of the documents that have been referred to that we haven't received at some stage prior to us to starting to discuss
Getting them
the...
now.
I think they're being distributed now, Councillor.
That's what I
Are we?
asked for. I asked for them.
Yeah, no,
So I've got-
but there
I've
was
just-
no answer.
I have
to your
just
question.
received them, so I
said
think they're
now,
on their way
and they've
round.
gone off and got them.
Yeah.
Well, okay, are we going to wait so that we all get them?
I think if you wait 2 minutes, you'll find that you'll get them.
Right. The next speaker is Sarah Nathan from Creative Waikato. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Pascoe, Your Worship, and councillors. Creative Waikato has not been involved to date with the discussions between Council and Reveille regarding the purchase of land that the theatre stands on, and so I am limited in how I can comment about the specifics, and I am not party to the report that's been distributed today. I was very pleased, however, today to get a call from Lois Livingston regarding the desire for Reveille and its theatrical associations to commence collaborative discussion with the rest of the theatre sector. This is something that we've all wanted for some time, and I'm very certain that that can lead to some positive outcomes. There are plenty of ways that theatres can build on collaborative planning and resource sharing that's already been modelled by the Meteor, Clarence Street and the Academy. What I'd like to talk about, however, is the importance of the holistic community theatre at this time. It is so great that this council has gifted Reveille, Meteor and Clarence Street to the community rather than selling these assets off to commercial buyers. By doing so, you have protected to a degree Hamilton's cultural future, particularly in light of Founders closure. Pardon me. The reality is, however, that every one of those buildings was not fully fit for purpose at handover and required further investment. In all cases, the cost of repairs and maintenance have been revealed to be significantly greater than what was estimated by Council. This has put extreme pressure on the entire sector. In light of Founders closure, Council needs to take a fresh look at Hamilton theatres from a collective perspective. We may be 3 to 5 years or more without a Founders or its equivalent. The remaining facilities, including Reveille, hold the responsibility for performing arts delivery in this city during that time, and that is a really big burden. Council needs to think not just about how it fixes Founders, but how it holds our cultural ecosystem together in the interim, and how it can do that by ensuring our theatres don't flounder under the burden of disproportionate expenses and capital works. And that includes being part of ensuring that Meteor, Clarence and Reveille can survive during this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Any questions? All right, thanks, Sarah. The final speaker in the public forum is Alistair Barnett, who's also from Reveille Theatre Complex. Welcome, Alistair.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, Your Worship, councillors. I asked to speak as I was probably one of the few survivors of the negotiating group at Reveille 33 years ago when we were talking to the council led by Sir Ross Jansen, as has been mentioned before, and I was personally very involved in all of those discussions. So I thought it might be helpful to council if I just gave you a quick recapitulation of what happened then. The situation was that there were 3 theatre groups on the Clarence Street site, Playbox, Music Makers and Hamilton Operatic. They each had their own theatre facility. There was a fair amount of cooperation between Playbox and Music Makers at the time, and things like set construction and so on, and there was also some contribution from with Hamilton Operatic, shared storage, that kind of thing, on that site. But the council at the time determined they wished to sell the bulk of the site to commercial interests, and they wanted us to vacate the site. And so we naturally said, well, we would like to continue our operation somewhere in Hamilton. We've got very strong following, and we think we have a value to the community. So, and that position was accepted by council. There had been a new building was just in progress at the time, and that was now the Clarence Street Theatre. But it was accepted by council that the three of us couldn't all squeeze into that one facility. Operatic themselves had a pretty full program at the time, and they were they anticipated using the theatre something like 80% of the year, so we couldn't really possibly do anything useful in the remaining 20%, the other two groups. So Playbox and Music Makers got together, and we formed a joint committee to negotiate with council, and council, with very good will, went out and tested various places, and they decided on Riverlea as the most appropriate place. It was then a nightclub, somewhat decrepit and running out, but the council bought that place for us, and we understood that was going to be a long-term arrangement, and so we moved over there. We've subsequently built significant additions to the place, and we've also brought the place up to earthquake standard at the time at our expense. And we have plans to go ahead and expand the building in the near future. We have started a building fund for that. Unfortunately, the building fund is now having to be taken because council suddenly decide that we need to buy the land which was provided for us all those years ago, and for some reason which we don't understand, suddenly there's this 180-degree U-turn that we are no longer, we understand that council wants the land for industrial development out there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alistair. Any questions?
Just your comment on the council wanting the land for industrial purposes. Can you elaborate on that? I don't understand what you mean.
Well, we were told that the council wished to sell that land, and they were prepared to offer us a first bite at it, but if we didn't accept the offer, then it would be sold for industrial purposes.
You still hold a long-term lease on the land, do you?
Up till 2027, yes.
Thank you.
Right, thanks, Alistair. Thanks very much for coming in. Thank you to all members who participated in the public forum today. The public forum is now at an end, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Finance Committee minutes of the 18th of February. On page 5 of our agendas. So you happy to move?
No, I've got a question.
Yes, okay.
On page 8 of the minutes, paragraph 6, second paragraph of paragraph 6 finishes with the report would be considered at the 19th of April Finance Committee meeting. That should be the 21st.
Thank you. But I'm happy to move that.
Just a couple of other points too. On page 12, page 12, the paragraph 9, third bullet point, second dash in, operational costs, so it's about the Claudens Event Centre. Operational costs were reduced to offset revenue shortfalls, noting that last year's budget was being matched, but the current year's growth targets were not on budget. Last year, I think that's inaccurate. In actual fact, the revenue at Claudelands has fallen below last year's figures. So unless I'm misreading that, I think that's an inaccurate report. If you look at the papers, which we're going to see later on in the day, you'll see that Claudelands' revenue has fallen below last year's figures. So I think that may be incorrect. And thirdly, top of page 13, paragraph 11, talking about Victoria on the River, and just a comment on the emphasis. I asked quite a few questions about the safety of the Victoria on the river site, and I don't think that urgency or the weight of the concerns that I was trying to raise at that were met by saying something about putting up some signs. I understand, under the new safety and health regulations, we've got to be very, very careful. And I think that I made an effort at that meeting to try and tease out as much as I could about the possible safety to people walking along, particularly along the walkway, the river walkway, beg your pardon, and I just don't think that's reflected in the minutes. So other than that, no problem.
Okay, do you want that recorded, both those items recorded?
Yes, please, because I think they are a truer
As comments?
record. Yeah,
Well,
truer
I'm
record.
not sure about the first one, when it's the one under item 9, noting that last year's budget was being matched. I think, is your comment around last year's budget or last year's actual?
Mr Chairman, if I could make a point on that, which I was going to, while Gary's point may be true, I think it is, the fact is that this was, in point 9 that the Chair's just referred to, the fact is that this was the statement made by the General Manager at the time, and these are minutes of the last meeting, and I think they should remain like that and get the proper pace for, I thank Gary for alerting us to the point, but the proper pace to discuss it surely is when we get the report that shows something different.
Yep. Thank you.
So, Chair, if I may assist, Councillor Mallet is correct about the lack of inclusion in the minutes recording what he said and what was discussed about safety matters. So could I suggest that it will not be appropriate to sign off minutes if they need some more inclusion in them, and they will need to be taken back and properly recorded. And also that will allow staff time to check the recording as to what was said in relation to paragraph 9. So I certainly would not be supporting signing off the minutes as a true and correct record if a councillor has raised matters that go to the substance of whether they are a true and correct record. So that's a suggestion, Chair.
Okay.
In the absence of democracy suggesting it, I'm suggesting.
Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, Chair, in item 11, just commenting on Councillor Mallet's comments, if that wasn't included in the resolution, that there be signs placed down there, then the resolution is correct, which is largely the point that Councillor McPherson was making. So in other words, if it wasn't in the resolution, why would we be attempting to potentially add that to the resolution when there's no other debate captured in that item 11?
I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with the resolution. What I'm suggesting is the preamble to that, the comment about warning signs, understates a significant percentage of the debate that was held, or the discussion that was held regarding that matter.
I mean, we don't have to sign the minutes off in a meeting. They can be carried over if there needs to be some corrections made to them. And I'm not going to vote to pass these if some councillors say they aren't substantive enough. I do have a question about an action as a result of the minutes, but that's after we've signed them off or whatever we're going to do.
Just looking at standing orders here around discussion on the minutes under 3.23, no discussion may arise on the substance of minutes at any succeeding meeting except as to their correctness. So completeness is not the word used in standing orders, it's only correctness.
That's right. And Councillor Mallet is saying that he doesn't think the minutes accurately record the discussion, so therefore they are not correct.
Okay, well, it could be also completeness as to whether they're complete. But I'm happy to hold the minutes. Is it possible for democracy to go back and review those during the course of this meeting today, and then we can come back to the minutes later in the meeting? Or we hold the minutes over till the next meeting?
I would recommend that we hold the minutes over to the next meeting and approve them at the next meeting.
All right.
Sorry, Chair, just another comment. Warning signs were covered in the preamble, and wouldn't it be simpler to accept the minutes, but a note from this meeting for the CEO to establish that the signs that Councillor Mallet was talking about that he ensures that they are in place.
I think it was even more than that. I was concerned about the risk to people who are walking. I mean, I remember the report talked about, and I may get the wrong wording here, but collapse or landslide. And I thought that what was being put to us was quite significant and had a lot of heft in terms of the staff reporting, and the questioning that flowed from that, I thought, has not been captured in this. Now, I appreciate that there's a level at which staff can't capture every debate point that people have said, but I just don't think if you are going to pick up some part of the debate, that woefully understates the gravity, I thought, of the level of discussion on that point.
All right, well, it's my suggestion that we hold the minutes over.
Yeah.
And so do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Mallett. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried.
Chair, can I just raise in relation to a matter that is not the subject of discussion, and that is the Waiwhakariki process. Can I just ask the General Manager, how's that process going? Because, of course, that's got to be gazetted and all the rest of it. So where's that up to?
Through you, Mr Chairman, the feedback from the public that was requested on the Reserves Act has come in and is closed. I think there's been 28 submissions, all of those in favour of it being gazetted as a reserve, and there's a report coming to Council in May for Council to finish its part of that process, which would then go to gazettal to the Minister's office.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so let's move on now to item number 6, which is the action list on page 19. Are there any items for discussion under the action list? There being none, I move that the report be received. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mallett. Any discussion? Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Item 7 on page 23 is the recommended dates for reports to be presented to the Finance Committee, and that's contained on attachment 1 on page 24. I'm happy to move that that report be received. Councillor McPherson seconded. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, so we move now on to item 11, which is the provision for an unfluoridated water source, and that's on page 79 of the written agenda. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. Just before I start, I just want to acknowledge the attendance of representatives from Fluoride Free Hamilton who are in the audience with us today. So I'll be very, very brief here. So this report has come to you today in response to a previous council resolution to report back on options for the provision of a non-fluoridated water supply. So staff have gone away and done some work with Fluoride Free Hamilton to develop and understand some options, and Fluoride Free Hamilton have authorised me to say that they strongly support the recommendations before you, that both the Taitua Arboretum and the Claudon sites are good options for them. So I do note that during the detailed investigations, the Claudon's option is now estimated to come in about $10,000 over the available budget. And I guess the only other matter I wish to draw attention to is a potential new risk that's come through since the report was distributed in relation to government proposals to shift the decision-making around fluoridation to DHBs. And so in the longer term, should that manifest itself, the city may be instructed in relation to fluoridation or not. Happy to take questions.
I'm happy to move when you're ready.
I've got Councillor McPherson with a question.
And I'm happy to second the report as well, but I want to ask a question in relation to your last comment about the government changes. The government change is to give the authority to DHB would be in relation to our city water supply, would it not? The primary water supply, not what we might provide as an extra or something on the side.
That's the unknown for me. So in the absence of any specific decision in that space, that's the reason I've signalled the risk. There's a potential, because technically in terms of water grading, the Clauden's options are a treatment facility, and so there's a potential for the city to be instructed to fluoridate treatment facilities. So it's only a potential, but I felt it was prudent to raise it, given it's still...
I mean, Taitua Arboretum, for instance, doesn't even come through, it's got no connection at all to the city.
The Taitua option is you're correct, it's not connected to the city at all, and it's from a bore water supply.
And is the proposal for Claudelands including a sort of a removal of fluoride aspect somewhere in the chain?
That's exactly right. So the Claudelands option essentially takes water from the reticulation, and then uses technology to remove the fluoride, and it removes chlorine as well and other things.
Okay. So if a future DHB instruction were to say we were to remove all fluoride from the water,
yes.
I think that'll be long after I'm dead. But it's hard. It's not going to matter that we've already removing it and some other chemicals as well. I just can't see that it's going to any possible future government or DHB instruction is going to change the situation we're in. You know, change these two outlet options.
So my advocacy would be, if there was an instruction to not fluoridate, then obviously you turn off the deioniser at Clauden's. If the instruction was to fluoridate all supplies, I would like to think as staff we would strongly advocate to continue to provide community choice and keep the Clauden's option available as an unfluoridated water source. But we're a long way away from those conversations. Yeah. Talking to the DHB, and I think 2018 or 19 is the earliest that they expect to exercise any decision making in that space, if at all.
Yeah, I bet they're running a mile at the moment from having to be involved in that. Thank you.
Okay, now I've got a question, Gary, from Councillor Mallett.
Thanks, Rob. What's grade B?
So B grade is very good. The reason the Taitua option would achieve a B grade is because there's no chlorine added, so there's no residual sterilising agent. So the water's perfectly safe to drink. There's no question about that at all. But what you might find is if you were to take a large bottle away and store it for months, it could grow algae or growth in it because it has no residual sterilising agent. And that's the only reason why it falls out as a grade B following the DHB grading guidelines. But it's, in reality, it's not an issue. It's a perfectly safe water source.
The current scenario is that both the Claudelands and the Taitua one, Arboretum one, would be owned, operated, maintained by the City Council. They would be City Council.
That's correct. So the Taitua one has always been owned and operated by the City Council. So there's no real change in that regard. The Claudelands option, it's new technology and new installation, so that's where the new operating costs kick in relation to that.
So these would still be provided under our legislative requirement to provide water?
We still, so we take the provision of drinking water for a municipal supply very seriously, yep. And these fall into that camp.
Under that? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Gallagher?
The lower hut scenario would be different, wouldn't it?
Yes, no, I've not brought my notes on that, but most other non-fluoridated water supplies are actually from bore water sources.
I'm unsure of the detail, obviously, of any legislation or regulation, but presumably this council would make submissions both to the Parliament, central government, and to the local DHB in terms of what we're doing and why. I'm just trying to think of your so-called risk factor. I mean, I personally wouldn't think there'd be an undue risk at all.
Look, we can, if there's a submission opportunity, we can bring that to council and seek guidance as to whether you wish to make a submission or not at the time.
Thank you.
Councillor Young?
Just follow on with the question about the B-grade water.
Yes.
It's safe to drink, right?
There is no question about the safety. B grade is extremely good quality. Okay. The only difference between a B grade water source and our current A grade is there's no residual sterilising agent in the water.
So how often council monitor the water quality there?
We would implement a monitoring regime both at Taitua and Claudens equal to the rest of the city network. So it's a very regular monitoring program that we would be put in place with a minimum of monthly samples and checks.
Okay, all right, thanks. Councillor Tooman.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Chair. I presume it's a sort of a holding tank going to be at Claudens, so that I don't know how long it will take to process.
No. So this what's proposed for Claudens is a deioniser, and it would process the water in real time. There'll be no storage because of the lack of residual sterilising agent in the water, no chlorine. So the deioniser would produce water on demand without the fluoride in it. There'll be no storage tank.
So if somebody rocks up there with a tanker,
the flow,
a day to fill it, sort of thing.
Yeah, you'll be there for weeks. The flow rate from the deioniser will be a few litres a minute. It won't be. You just would not fill up a tanker from it. It would be impossible. You'd be there for days or weeks.
So this is going to take quite some time for somebody to fill a.
No, so in discussions with representatives from Fluoride Free Hamilton, they've given us guidance on what they consider an acceptable flow rate to be to fill, I'd say a 10-litre container, 20-litre container. That's quite different to turning up with a 5,000-litre truck-mounted tank, and I just don't think it's an issue or a risk. It would take a long, long time to fill.
Further questions? Okay. Yep.
Sorry, thanks, Andrew. On paragraph 7, page 79, talks about the naturally occurring standard of fluoride in water, which is stuff that we don't put in. So would the Arboretum one actually remove the natural occurring fluoride too, would it?
No, so the Arboretum option is a natural option.
Yep.
You get what nature provides.
You get what nature gave you.
That's correct. The Claudens option, because we're employing technology to remove the fluoride, it will have an extremely low fluoride residual in it, extremely low.
And the fluoride-free people are comfortable with the naturally occurring level of fluoride?
That's my understanding. That's my understanding.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
I've got a couple of questions. Are there any additional costs associated with access and parking around where these water sites are going to be, given that, you might have a situation where there could be maybe 2 or 3 cars there at the same time while residents are filling up their water supply containers?
So that has been a matter of much debate, and it essentially strikes at the heart of demand. But both sites are open 7 days a week, for extended hours, and in discussion with the general manager who's responsible for those activities, we're comfortable that there's sufficient provision in terms of access and parking.
Okay, so we don't see anything happening there that might end up with a large bill for car parks or...
That's not our expectation based on forecast demand.
Just around the legal risk, and you mentioned in paragraph 27 about appropriate educational signage around what could happen to the water after it's been taken and perhaps if it's stored inappropriately or stored for any length of time. Have we looked at whether or not there's a legal risk for us if we don't have appropriate signage to warn users that, that they have a responsibility for subsequent storage of water and what they might need to do to ensure that the water remains safe to drink?
The proposal is to have that signage and provide that warning.
Okay.
That's the proposal.
So that's part of the cost here?
That's correct, yes.
The 70,000? Yes. Okay. Right. Councillor King?
So when you buy a bottle of water from the dairy, the supermarket, does it have residual sterilising agents in it?
No, it doesn't. But it's usually put. I'll use the word sterilise. It's sterilised. It's part of the treatment, whatever that might be, and it goes into a known sterile container, which is then sealed. As a city, you've got no control over what containers people will bring up. It's highly unlikely that they'll be sterilised perfectly when they're used. So there's a very small risk, and the proposal is not necessary to deal with it head on, other than to have signage and make people aware that there is no chlorine in the water.
Thank you.
Right. No further questions. Your Worship, you moved the recommendation from management. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor McPherson. Is there any discussion on the motion? Right. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, the next item is the Rivoli Theatre, which is on our page 110. Yeah. I used to sit with him. Okay, welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the report is reasonably clear, but there are a couple of updates I need to provide you. So effectively, Council resolved in September 2014 to sell the land to Rivoli, and that full resolution is noted on item number 5. Subsequently, the negotiations with Rivoli centred around their ability to actually raise the market value of the land and the length of time it would take for them to do that. They made submissions to Council, and Council considered those on the 30th of July 2015. At that meeting, the earlier resolution was confirmed. Council then, staff then negotiated directly with Rivoli's solicitors over the length of time that they would require in order to raise the funds, and it was agreed that 9 months would be a reasonable length of time. An agreement for sale and purchase was entered into at that time and was executed by both parties. The sale and purchase price was $460,000, which was the market value of the land established in 2014. The sale and purchase agreement was conditional on 2 clauses. One of those has been satisfied. The only one now that remains unsatisfied is the finance clause, which requires Rivoli to confirm that they have sufficient funds to meet the purchase price by settlement on the 1st of July. Rivoli have subsequently come back, and you've seen the correspondence that was sent both to the CEO and to the council staff through their solicitor, and has requested that the sale and purchase agreement be varied and that the purchase price be reduced from $460,000 to $350,000. And that's where we find ourselves today. I'll just make a comment about valuation. The valuation, of course, was established in 2014, so it's now 19 months out of date. I've sought valuation advice, and there has been a significant movement in the value of the land, and that has meant that the $460,000 for the whole site with the lease in place has shifted. $75,000 has increased now to $535,000. So I think I have to say that I genuinely believe that this sale and purchase.
Could you say that figure again?
535,000 is the market value of the land today.
Thank you.
And has the valuer also indicated what the valuation would be if there wasn't a lease in place?
Yes, he has. That's increased 65,000 and is now $1,025,000. So a 6.7% increase. I have to say I do believe this is a very good deal for Rivoli, because effectively, regardless of what the purchase price is, and that's been established by market valuation, they are getting an asset pretty much for half price, and that is simply a reflection on the unique circumstances of this particular situation, whereby they have a long lease which conditions the value of the land in the marketplace. So what that means in practice is that if Rivoli were to purchase for whatever price today, they could sell the property unencumbered the next day for double that value. Now, the reality is they won't do that, I'm sure. They're committed to their site and they've been there for many, many years. But effectively, they're getting a balance sheet which shows an asset that's worth twice the amount they paid for it. In addition to that, since the agreement for sale and purchase was executed, there's been a 16% increase in the value of the land. So to put that in sort of percentage figures, a reduction in the sale and purchase price today of $110,000 represents a 24% discount on the sale and purchase price agreement. And if you compare that with the current market valuation for the site, that represents a 35% discount on market price. Now, I think my recommendation is that we extend the time it takes for Rivoli to raise the funds in order for them to purchase the land. And the reason I'm making that recommendation is twofold. Firstly, I think that we have a policy which stipulates that we need to sell council property at valuation. And that valuation was fixed, as I say, 19 months ago and is still, I think, below what would be paid today for the land. The second thing is I think that Rivoli are the only parties in this matter who are able to benefit directly from liberating $500,000 worth of asset value. We can't do it as council. The open market can't do it. While the lease remains in place, only Rivoli can benefit in that way. So I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now I have questions from Councillor McPherson and then Councillor Gallagher.
My first question relates to the process here today, and particularly to your decision, Nick, not to follow the request that's in Rivoli's lawyer's letter in point 5, the bottom of that page, that this letter be provided to council either at this meeting or earlier, if possible, it says. It seems to me that this request and also the information in the email are pretty germane to this discussion, at least as germane as your comments on the supposed market movement, which are just verbal.
Yes, I think that's a valid point. And all I can say there is that I think what has happened here is an administrative mix-up. The correspondence from Ms Livingston was emailed directly to the CEO, and no direction was received from the CEO as to whether or not that should be included or not in the report.
But you had a copy of it, did you not?
I did have a copy of it, yes, that's correct.
And point 5, you would accept as a direct request to raise this meeting?
Yes, I would.
And you wrote the report yourself?
I did.
So you could have chosen to have quoted this or included this as part of your report, and the CEO would have no doubt signed that off like he signed the rest of your report?
Yes. Look, I suppose what I did was I referenced the specific, and it's included in section 8 of my report, that referenced the specific request that was made without including the full correspondence on the matter.
Okay. You said in your verbal comments just before that you felt the current proposal and your recommendation represented, I think you used the words, represented a good deal for Rivoli, because they could, and you went on to say they could liquidate the lease and the property following that and immediately double their money, or words to that effect. But then in your next sentence or so you said, but I don't think they're going to do that, or I'm sure they're not going to do that, or some words to that effect. Isn't the first comment you made, if that's not your opinion, that they could do that, why even bring that up? Because it certainly colours the report, does it not? Saying, well, they could double their money overnight, when clearly, as you then later accept, they're a theatre group, they're a community theatre group, they're there for a purpose of operating community theatre. And they're not likely, you yourself agree they're not likely to do so, why put it in the report?
Well, I suppose what I'm saying there is I'm speculating about as to what might happen, and I'm really trying to make the point that there is residual value here that really only Rivoli can liberate. And you know, whether that sits as a $1 million asset on their balance sheet that they could borrow against, effectively that they are the only ones who benefit from the value in that asset.
Well, I think it would be a fair point, would it not, to say that they could, in a commercial sense, borrow against the market value of that.
Yes.
But to make as almost your first comment that they could sell it and double their money, isn't that a bit, what are they, I can't...
Theatrical?
Well, certainly that. In fact, that would have gone quite well on the stage at Rivoli, I think.
Yes, I take your point. I would also make the point, however, that we are selling them the entirety of the site. So the other component here is they still have the option of the subdivision themselves and making use of the site in that way.
But they have made the point, have they not, and you would have been aware of it, that it's currently in use in part by some other performance art organisations, and they've made the comment here today that that's what they potentially see as the future use of the not unused part of the site that doesn't attach directly to the theatre.
Yes, I stand to be corrected, but my understanding is if you look at attachment 1, which shows the 3 areas that we're talking about here, the shared lease to the Civic Choir is on the extreme upper edge of the boundary in yellow, so it's the part, it's the building here. Yeah. And that there is nothing currently on the area shown as blue, which is the bit that might potentially be subdivided.
I can see some stuff on the west.
Yes, those were containers. When this photo was taken, those containers, I believe, housed some of Operatic Society's equipment, but they have been removed, or they were removed at my request. So apparently they're still there. Must have come back.
They haven't followed your request, Nick.
No, par for the course.
Trees have grown over them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Gallagher.
This is effectively a report from our Chief Executive, whom we apply, so I recognise your professional aspect. You presented a property report. Has the senior leadership team had any dialogue with you in terms of the broader issues, which I think Sarah Nathan from Creative Waikato amply qualified, given the current situation we are now in, given that Rivoli, obviously, for the next 4 or 5 years at least, is a very strategic part of our performing arts mix?
Yes. The report is focused from a property perspective, that is correct. And the reason for that is that the substantive issues around the theatre were, I think, debated at those 2 meetings I referred to earlier. And effectively what we're doing here is we're not disposing of an asset in the sense that we're not closing down a theatre. We are transferring the ownership from one party to another party, but the net sort of theatrical space in the city remains the same. So this is focused very much as a contract variation property report, that is true. I have, of course, obviously spoken to my direct GM on this matter, and he's signed off on the report, and I'm not sure if, Calvin, you want to comment in any way?
No, that's correct. So we have looked at it purely from a property perspective, because as Nick has rightly said, we're not changing the shape or face of the theatre component in the city. It's purely been looked at as a resolution of this council previously.
I think we have an art strategy somewhere. Has been cognizance taken of that?
No, because again, the transaction wasn't to try and change the impact on the volume of theatrical performance area. It was simply a transaction of land.
Do you have any comment that Lois Livingston has made the point, as has Sarah Nathan, that if the council drives too hard a bargain, the theatre could close?
Yes, obviously that is a concern, but I suppose at the end of the day we have to weigh up balance the needs of the ratepayers as a whole in terms of the policy around achieving sale at market value with the needs of the performing art group. And I think, as I've said before, that this actually represents a pretty good deal for Rivoli.
Final question, again, compared with the multitude of sports groups that this council over many years has given lots of help to, Waikato Stadium would be one, various clubhouses on council land, do you see any sort of correlation?
No, I don't think I could make a comment on that matter, Councillor.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Chesterman.
Yes, thanks, Chair. No question, but just a signal to you that I have given the Committee Secretary a resolution that has been seconded by Councillor Gallagher. And when you are ready to take it, I'd be happy to have that put up on the board.
Okay, well, I'm happy to put that up if there are no further questions. Questions from Councillor King?
So, how many months have we been in a holding pattern for?
Sorry, when you say a holding pattern, can you be clear?
Since the original talks begun and the original valuation was done,
90.
how many months has it been? Can I ask the General Manager, what's Council's most favourable interest rate we pay to borrow money?
Most favourable? Sorry, can you explain that?
What do we pay for the money that we have borrowed?
Well, because we enter into swaps, we have long-term debt arrangements, so...
Well, what's our average?
The average is around 3.45%.
So while we've been waiting for 18 months, would it be reasonable, 19 months, would it be reasonable to call that a loss to council while we haven't had the money in the coffers and we've been borrowing money elsewhere because of it?
In terms of being reasonable, it's focusing on this topic about selling the land. So as I've been listening, we've been trying to resolve this as quickly as possible. That's fair to both parties.
While we haven't had the $460,000, does that mean we've been paying 3.5% elsewhere for money?
That's correct.
Which is around about another $30,000 over the 19 months.
That's correct.
So there's been a $75,000 capital gain while we've been waiting for the 19 months. We haven't had a revaluation done because we've got a sale and offer agreement on the books.
Yes, that's
So
right.
there's $75,000 lost to the city there, as well as another close to $30,000 in interest holding costs, which is close to $100,000.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you have recommended option 2, which is a win-win for everybody, surely? The theatre still have their land and everything that they use on that land, apart from the gully bit, the steep bit, which hasn't been developed for decades. We get that title, we subdivide that off, get that title back, and we get the outstanding $100,000.
There are principally two reasons why I didn't recommend that option. One is there is a certain amount of risk associated with the subdivision in terms of the costs of that subdivision and how long we would take to recover our money. I think ultimately we would probably be better off long term doing it that way, but it may take 2 years, 3 years or longer to recover that, and of course we've got the upfront costs as well. But I think the principal reason I didn't recommend it is because I do genuinely believe that Riverlea is the best purchaser for this land from a community point of view, but also from a financial point of view in terms of preserving inherent value on the site.
Thank you.
Councillor Mallett.
Very similar to what Andrew just said. Was the last thing Andrew talked about was the bit of the land that's circled in blue. Well, circle isn't the right word, but ensconced in blue. My understanding is that that is fallow land. There's no one using it. There's containers on it every now and then. Looking at this thing from the perspective of the entire city, the ratepayers, everyone who's in this boat, that seems to me to be a relatively eloquent solution. I mean, we're kind of forcing Riverlea to purchase a bit of land that's not necessary or required for them, and that has taxed their ability to raise money. The subdivision, yes, may take a little time to realise the money, the yield from that, but it certainly does reduce would honourably reduce the purchase price to Riverlea and ensure that the ratepayer doesn't take one in the back.
I think it's a very acceptable second choice.
So, but you believe Rivoli is a better owner of that? So just triggering off how you responded to Andrew, you said, in your sort of heart of hearts, that Rivoli is the best owner of that bit of land.
Well,
that
I think
particular bit, the bit that's fallow now, or not used at the moment.
Yeah, as I say, in terms of the asset value, there's $500,000 that could be realised by one party only, without compromising the city's need to obtain market value for the sale of its assets. And effectively, we could subdivide that. We could take Rivoli's 350,000, pro-rata it. It's near enough to the area shown as yellow. Sell them that at market, which would be 350,000.
I think they may not want to do that, but that makes the financing for them a heck of a lot easier.
Yes, that's correct. We would then have to fund upfront development and subdivision costs, and then there would be a period of marketing the property. But I think at the end of that period, whether it be a year or 2 years, the numbers would show that we had more than achieved market value. But what would have been lost in that is the ability for Rivoli as a community group, who have obviously struggled to get over this initial hurdle, to then benefit from all that hard work through the residual value, if you like, the hidden value of the asset.
The hidden value being that extra bit of land?
No, the hidden value being the $500,000 of estimated market value that only pertains to them while they have the lease.
Presumably, in order for the council to subdivide and sell that land, we'd need the acceptance from Rivoli that they would have to lift the lease, because their lease is for all of that.
No, their lease is only for the area shown as yellow.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So it wouldn't require their permission, their agreement?
No.
So what you've just said is Rivoli never did have a lease on this land, on the blue land?
Correct.
It was never part of what they had?
No, it's never been part of it.
Sorry, just to be clear, what are we asking them to buy?
We're asking them to buy the whole site, the site bordered in red. So their leased area plus the area shown as blue.
So they never had the piece of land next door, but they want that as part of the package. They can't come up with the money. We've got an option here for them to pay the 350 that they've got without what they never had in the first place.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I follow you. I think what you're saying is effectively they were offered the full site, so the site bordered in red, at 460,000, which was the market value established by valuation in accordance with policy in 2014. That is beyond the current leased area, which is the area shown in yellow. The, if you like, the fallow ground shown in blue has never been part of their leased area.
You talked about a risk involved with the subdivision.
Yes.
Are you aware that there's a building supply company who's shown interest in buying the land bordered in blue?
No, I'm not specifically aware of that, Councillor. When I talk about...
That's never come through your department?
No, it hasn't. When I talk about risk, I think I'm talking in a generic sense. We don't know how long it will take to market. We don't know what the final subdivision costs might be. If you're asking me what my assessment of that level of risk is, I think it is low.
Your own report says there's quite a large gain to be made by us going that way.
Yes. There looks to be about a 75k margin there.
As far as the 3 theatres in town go, 2 of them have been given their buildings in recent times, within the last 3 years. Who owns the land under those other 2 buildings?
The council does.
So if either of those theatres came to us and said they wanted to buy the land, or if we proposed to sell the land, what price would we have to sell it at?
We would have to sell it at market valuation.
So
unless you decided, of course, to resolve not to do that, sell it at lower or higher than that value.
So our own guidelines so that when we sell land, we sell it at valuation.
Correct, but that can always be varied by a council resolution.
That's the only way it can be varied.
Correct. As staff, we certainly don't have any discretion in that matter.
Thank you.
Just one final question before you've got a question too, have you, Deputy Mayor?
Look, the question was a concern around the blue land with Councillor King introducing new information as almost like a property broker about companies or individuals interested in buying that land. And the council has got no knowledge of that. Are you concerned as chair that that's introducing new unprovable information that could actually skew the debate and understanding? Who are these people that are interested in this land?
Well, I thought the answer to Councillor King's question was that we had no one who was interested in the blue land.
Well, I thought I heard Councillor King say that he knows of people who are interested in purchasing that blue land from council. Have I misunderstood what he was saying?
I guess the answer to that is to Nicholas is have we had approaches from those people to purchase the blue land?
No.
No.
Just put on record that I'd be happy to buy that land at the price it's being offered to Rivoli Theatre if I could.
Would Councillor Mallett sign a sale agreement today?
At that price, at this price, yes.
We'll take the
order. They'll get off that land and what they're paying for 50 just for that one block.
Order. We're having questions. I've got one question that obviously I wasn't totally aware of the fact. I thought that Rivoli had the lease over the whole site, which I understand is the whole site, including the red and the yellow, is all one title. Is it normal to have a lease over a title for only part of the land area? Is that something that's unusual in this particular?
No, I wouldn't say it was unusual. If you're asking me why it was done that way, I'm sorry, I simply don't know. It's well before my time. But I would imagine at the time that that arrangement was made, the discussion would have been around the amount of space that Rivoli actually requires. If you're standing on the site, there's a sort of a physical demarcation around some of that boundary between the blue and the yellow area, but not over all of it. They've probably been using it de facto, but it's not included in the actual area of their lease.
Okay. All right. Do we have any further questions? Otherwise, I'll go to Deputy Mayor Chesterman's resolution, which he and Councillor Gallagher wish to put up on the board. Are we ready to put that up on the board? Democracy.
Can you enlarge it a bit?
Okay.
You've been drinking.
Do you wish to speak to? You want to have a chance to read the motion? Right, we have a mover and a seconder for the motion. Deputy Mayor Chesterman, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think it's important for councillors to be reminded that we have two current thriving theatre groups, the Meteor and Clarence, that we have supported and endorsed and encouraged. And I've spoken in the chamber previously about the need for equal treatment when it comes to the performing arts. And it seemed to me at the time, and still seems to me now, that we have treated the Meteor and Clarence a little bit differently than Rivoli. And I believe that the revised offer from Rivoli, the reduced offer, reflects a financial support, if you like, and is a better balance into our treatment of the three theatre groups. And certainly I agree it's a little bit different in what we're talking about today. The long-term lease that Rivoli has over the bulk of the property seriously does diminish the value of the property, as we've heard today, diminished by about 50% or close to. And only Rivoli can unlock that potential. So I think that this resolution, and I would urge councillors to support it today, is a move to bring fairness and equality into the way in which we are treating our theatre groups. And I think that this would be a very good signal that we've tidied up a package of three groups and we're allowing them to develop and thrive in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, sorry, I just have a question about the
About the motion?
Yeah. Can I ask the mover why you've set a purchase date of 1st of September?
That's in the...
It's got 2015 here, not 2016. If the Rivoli Theatre Group has their funds now, why are we waiting for settlement on the 1st of September?
I'm sorry, it's a technical question I can't answer, but maybe the Rivoli Trust might indicate any change that would be possible with that date. I have no reason, perhaps staff could comment on it, but it's just a date as far as I'm concerned, but would be happy to change it if that's the agreement of the groups.
I think it was in the lawyer's letter because we have to negotiate with all our funders as to making sure that they're agreeable to all of this and to be able to sign off even on 350,000. We will have to go back to all those funders and get their agreements, etc. So it's not just us deciding. We can't make those decisions without the people who are actually putting up the money, including some of the people who have given donations.
But there is a reasonable prospect that if this was approved, you would be able to get certainty on settling on the 1st of September.
Give us certainty for operating for the next year or so, so we can make further applications for our funding that we can't at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Lois.
So, look, I don't understand that, and I've just gone back to the letter. There's no reference to September the 1st, 2016. There is a reference to September the 1st, 2015, which is when the first letter was presented or sent from Stace Hammond, and I understood from what you said, Lois, that you're in funds now of 436,483. So I'm just trying to understand why you couldn't settle earlier.
We may be able to, love to. But we have 140,000 of that as in promissory grants. Those are the grants I'm talking about. Lotteries have given money to buy the land. That's only 220-odd thousand. The rest are coming in promissory grants that we have to achieve the full sale, etc. And we have, for this to change, we have to go back to them and explain what's happening and make sure that they're okay with that. I know one of them will, which will take us over the 350,000. But the others, we're hoping that we can persuade them then to allow their grants to be used for operating expenses. Unless council wants to do what they've done with Rivoli, with the other two, and now give us 100.
So you're 436 or not?
Sorry?
At your 436,483 now in funds or not?
That's what we've achieved with the $140,000 worth of promissory grant. Now the promissory grant just says when you've achieved the total amount, we will release our funds to you. All funding's like that. No funder will give you the money without you achieving the total that's before them.
So if you don't achieve the 460, which is what the sale price is, then you won't get the balance of 436. Is that correct?
We're investigating a bank loan right now for this month.
On or before?
So we are fully so we are up against it, as it were.
Okay.
So I'm still confused. I'm sorry if I can't get it, but I don't understand.
I think we're quite clear here that that if we continue, and this is my understanding, if we continue with the motion as it's read, then we have reasonable certainty that the Rivoli Trust will be able to settle on that date, and that they would go unconditional. Now,
On September the 1st.
no, they would go unconditional on the 1st of May, which is the current agreement.
Right.
And settle on the, am I right, Lois, in saying that? And you would settle on the 1st of September?
Sorry, Chair. If it's helpful to pick up that point, it could be purchase settlement on or before 1 September, which gives the Rivoli Trust the opportunity to settle earlier, but we know that it's an unconditional offer and that it will be settled no later than the 1st of September or earlier.
You're happy with that, Councillor Gallagher? Okay, so can we add some words in there to that effect?
Excuse me, Chair, could I flag an amendment, please?
Certainly. Well, we are actually in debate now.
Get it up, though, I want to know what it is. What is the...
So
We just haven't had a chance of just flagging. I do want to put an amendment up.
well, do you want to do that now? Because we're actually in debate on the motion.
We're allowed to put up amendment at any time before the vote.
Okay, well,
And I'm indicating now that I'm ready to put up an amendment when you're finished with with the Deputy Mayor.
Okay, well, the Deputy Mayor has finished his debate. Councillor Forsyth, were you going to debate
Yes.
or ask a question?
No, I was just trying to understand the
Okay, so it was a
rationale for the
question.
motion.
Okay. All right.
A question.
So, okay, so you're foreshadowing an amendment now, are you? Okay.
It's not a foreshadow.
Oh, foreshadow,
No, it is an amendment.
an amendment. Okay, so when will you have that for us?
I'm ready.
Okay, all right. Well, let's put that up now, and then we can consider continuing the debate with both the motion and the amendment.
So going with option 2.
Confirms. Just recognise it.
I'm happy to second that as well.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Now, option 2, okay, so you're happy with that? Mover and second? Okay, so I'm suggesting.
What are we now? April. Yeah, I don't think we need that long. I don't think it needs the 25th of September. I think 3 months is plenty from today to put the money together.
16, 25th, September. That's got 2014 as the September date.
Yeah, we.
Councillor King, can you just repeat?
No, that's okay. It doesn't. We don't have a date there for the execution, but.
So option 2 is the sale of the land to Rivoli in the yellow area?
That's correct.
And is it being sold for 350,000 plus GST?
As described in option 2.
Okay.
But I think it needs an execution date, which I think is probably 3 months out from here is enough time to pull the money together.
Is that enough time, Nicholas, for the subdivision to be completed? Because we wouldn't be able to settle until the land was the existing title of the red and the yellow, the blue and the yellow were actually separately subdivided.
Yes, look, I'm advised it's a 3-month minimum process.
Okay. So we're looking
Okay.
at September again, 1st of September?
Well, you
2016.
probably say with settlements within 30 days of the subdivision being completed.
Right.
So Chair, could I just make a little suggestion here, given that we are talking about legal transactions? In the absence of any general manager stepping in here, I am. Could I suggest you take a 5-minute break while people sort out the right wording here? Okay? Just a cautionary note. Okay? I think it would be useful.
Right. Okay, I think that's, thank you, Your Worship. I think that's the right thing to do. It's 4 minutes to 3. So if we can resume at 3:05, please.
1 minute.